Hey y'all, and welcome to another North American Sustainable Farms podcast episode. This is going to be the audio only version again, and what we're talking about today is the magic of mushrooms. If you're not familiar with this awesome superfood, it is actually a varying superfood with tons of different kinds of mushrooms that exist all throughout the world, and a lot of them are more edible than most of us realize, or at least edible in general, whether you have to cook them or there's some type of processing, or if they're used only for medicinal, so you only have like so much of it daily, or even once a week. It varies per mushroom, but that's what I mean. These things, there's so much to them. It's a whole nether food category. It's a whole nother animal kingdom. Technically, they're more related to animals than they are plants, but it is fungus and it is among us, and I think it's one of the most fascinating things out there, and that's what I want to talk about today. When I say a varying superfood, the reason I say that is because when you hear mushroom, you probably generally think of the store-bought button mushrooms that you see every day when you go, or all the time when you go to the grocery stores, whether they're portobellos or the regular white buttons. These are actually two cousin species of your regular field button mushroom, and they're cousins of each other as well. And there's even this one that's my favorite now, which is called the almond button mushroom. That's actually a North American native button mushroom that grows with equine manure and cattle manure, and sometimes just in pastures and fields where there has been, wild grazing animals. It is so phenomenal. It smells like an almond extract when you break open the stem. Even when you break open the cap, you can smell this almond extract smell. It's truly fascinating. It smells delicious. And it can be a little concerning because you'll also see yellowing, like really intense yellowing, and there's all these warnings about this wild, yellowing mushroom that's like this super poisonous mushroom, but it smells horrible. It doesn't smell like almonds, guarantee you. So that took me a long time to find out. And that's kind of what's really interesting about mushrooms. There's so much microphobia, or mycophobia, as some like to say, or fungal phobia when it comes to mushrooms. People are so considered that the wild mushrooms are going to be super deadly and kill us, when there's tons of mushrooms that are just completely just a branch away in genetics from what we see in the store every day. And then there's some mushrooms that you see that are super expensive in certain specialty stores, or just, that are sold once in a while as a specialty item in your regular grocery stores. And those mushrooms can actually be grown independently. Like, as an individual, you can grow those mushrooms at home. You can even cultivate those mushrooms by cutting off a tissue sample, or finding these little pieces of white that's on like the base of the mushrooms, or on what look like dirt or wood chips, depending on what mushroom you're getting. And that white is actually the actual plant of the mushroom. And what's crazy about this plant, this body of the mushroom, seeing how the mushroom is actually the fruit of the actual fungus. So I keep saying mushroom, but it's really a fungus. And the mushroom is the fruit. So think about that. The mycelium is this white stuff, like what we call mushrooms. This white stuff is the actual thing that grows the mushrooms. The white stuff is the animal or plant. It's the body of this living thing. Like, it's so crazy, and it's got one cell wall thick, so it's got this amazing immune system when it's actually grown properly and cultivated in the wild or in a natural environment. So many phenomenal things when it comes to mycelium and the fruit that they bear, which is mushrooms. And I could just go on for hours, so I'm going to not basically just discuss some of the key points here. And one of those, again, going back to button mushrooms. Some of these wild cousins of these normal store-bought button mushrooms actually have more health benefits. And even button mushrooms themselves, it's shown and said that there is actually some antidepressant benefits, as well as general vitamin intake. They're really good at giving us vitamin D and whatnot. But when it comes down to it, some of these wild mushrooms, like the almond button mushroom, they're even better at relieving depression, like super better. And even some of these other equine mushrooms that aren't psychedelic, but are considered like there are psychedelic variances, or they're just poop mushrooms so nobody eats them, but they're called Panaloas. And some of them call them copelandias or copes, but they only call them those if they're psychedelic. The Panaloas name is used for all these other mushrooms that there's like this huge debate on whether there's psilocybin in them or psilocin. And I think one of the confusions is that a lot of the Panaloas have 5-HTTP in it and serotonin. And there's even an argument about how the body receives serotonin as an exact molecule from food sources. So there could be a little debate or hypothesis towards consuming 5-HTTP with serotonin, and what other kind of alkaloids or what other kind of vitamin, minerals, compounds are inside of these panellose mushrooms, and how are they all interacting together? Because some people claim to experience a kind of psychedelic euphoria or a mild trip while consuming these, even though science has shown they don't consume psilocybin, or they don't contain psilocybin or psilocin. So right in there in itself, we have this magical, mystical group of mushrooms that nobody wants to eat because they grow out of horse manure. They're very fragile. They can't really be cultivated continuously in a commercial setting because they can go bad really fast. But they may be antidepressants. It's just phenomenal. So we're learning so much about mushrooms right now in mycology. It's a great field to get into if you're interested, and it's definitely something that we're incorporating into our farm stuff. We already have bags growing, we're testing different growing methods, and we're really just working on getting a system down to where we can turn out bags of mushrooms every month and either dry them and sell them fresh, or sell the spore prints or the tissue samples so people can grow them. We will eventually have some reselling supplies for mushrooms on our reselling store at nasf.life, so you can look forward to those as well. But moving on here, all this sounds fun, all this is great, and I keep saying it's very easy to cultivate, it's very easy to clone as far as taking tissue samples. I say easy, but I should say it is very possible for anybody to do it. Nothing is really easy if it's worth doing. That's just the truth. And with this, it takes practice. But once you get the practice down, it overall requires a little input and it produces great yields. If you can develop a system for yourself and your family, or just, if you don't have a family, I understand your community, and I feel that if you don't have family, you should reach out to people and create a community around you. None of us should be alone. So, but with that, producing great yields out of just getting established ritual and established habits, using waste products, like you can use manures, you can use ash, like wood ash, you can use hay, straw, cut grasses, any kind of cut fodder, so like, grasses, green shoots. Those things, after they're dried, can all be used as substrate in different kinds of mushroom growths, whether it's oyster mushrooms, button mushrooms. And when I say button mushrooms, I mean a variety of button mushrooms. There's when it comes to the agaricus species and things that are like button-esque, it comes down to, I think there's like 15 different species of edible button mushrooms. So it's really interesting how we only see 2 on the shelves. Yeah. But again, this is something that you can grow in your backyard, you can grow in your house, grow in your basement, grow in the attic or a little closet, and you can have food that you can either start selling it, or just takes a supplement or takes away a part of your expenses every month when it comes down to producing food for yourself or those around you. So it's really fascinating. But we will come out with more content that discusses, all those details and what's going on in the future. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. One of the biggest things why I wanted to touch on this, and I say the magic of mushrooms, is because there's a lot of mushrooms that can be used for medicine. And when I say different mushrooms can be used for medicine, I mean like different mushrooms can be used for different kinds of medicine. There's actually a certain kind of mushroom that fights polio. Wow. So it's just so much going on, including styrofoam, plastics, particle board. Those 3 things can be made from mushrooms, and they're mainly made from mycelium. So that's the plant or animal body of the mushroom being the fruiting body. So think about that. Like, this thing is not just mushrooms, it's mycelium. It's this amazing fungal mass, and there's all these different species of fungal masses that make mushrooms all over the place, and they feed us, and they heal us, and they take care of us, because they take care of trees, they take care of plants, they take care of our earth, guys. That's the magic of mushrooms. This is insane. Like, that we have not acknowledged this as a species, even though this information has been passed down for thousands of years. Like, itch my head, scratch my head, what WTF, mate? I mean, they've even found an ancient man that had a piece of mushroom with him. And I forget like the actual story, but Paul Stamets always talks about it. It's fascinating. I'll try to remember to link Paul Stamets' YouTube channel, at least, in the description of this. But again, y'all, check out Paul Stamets. Check out our mushroom page on our website. Check out our resale store. We will have some mushroom items in there. We already do have a mushroom log that we're reselling from another company that's a really good company. And that's, again, the resale store is really to help us fund our campaigns, fund our farm organization, get it all going as well as the contributions. If you want to contribute, though, you always can do that. We're always appreciative. And the contribution amount does raise the total amount that we display on the website. So if you do contribution, that amount you give will go straight into that total amount of contributions received. If you do a reselling item or a merchandise item from a merch store, or you buy services through us, or buy food items, products from us directly, only a percentage of that actually goes back into the contribution campaign. We will, though, always take a small percentage from every purchase, every payment we receive for products or services, and put that back into the contribution campaigns. So, again, you can check out the breakdown for the contributions on the NASF.life website on the ICFCS page, as well as the contribution page. So make sure to check that out, y'all. And thank you for joining me on this podcast. More podcasts coming and more videos to come on the NASF YouTube channel. That's going to be it, y'all. Thank you again. Remember to have a blessed and wonderful day. And all I can ask from all y'all is to keep growing a better tomorrow.